Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Mitch, I know we're trying to figure this out, but we are not going to name the podcast The Business of Theater. Leave the ghost light on for me. We just can't do that. For one, it's too long.
But you're the one,
cute.
You're just refusing to allow change, Darnell. It's you who is stopping us from finding our secondary title. But I'm okay. We're still young at this.
I know, I guess because I worked really hard on the graphic, it just came together. It came together so well, and I just can't think of, what would I change it to? I thought about maybe every season we have a different working title, or something, but I haven't found anything. Actually, I just found a lot of rejects, and if you're following us in the show notes, you'll see all the rejects.
Well, and in addition, if we wait long enough and if we get enough money, then we can have a contest and give the winner, $10 or something, right?
Yeah, or we could sponsor the podcast. Just have so and so presents.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. We need
money bags.
We need our sugar daddy or sugar mommy to come on in.
Sugar Daddies Unlimited presents The Business of Theater. Still a working title, but
still a working title.
Welcome to The Business of Theater, a working title. I am Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
Let's get down to business. So, Mitch, we passed back and forth some interesting articles to just kind of get an idea of what we were going to talk about. And, as we're approaching June, which is the end of fiscal years for nonprofit arts organizations, is winding down. It's the end of school years. It's a moment where people people who live on the East Coast, Northeast Coast, look forward to beaches and leaving these cities. I just saw an obnoxious line formed in New York to get to the beaches, via ferry.
And cars. We have Jones Beach. We have Orchard Beach. We've got plenty, and the parks are amazing. We just had Fleet Week here in New York. So, we had all the ships in. We have the Hudson River. We have lots of choices.
There's Gunnison Beach if you're brave.
Why is that? What's brave about that?
It's clothing optional.
See, I did not know.
Some parts. I've never been. I've only heard stories.
I'm sure.
Many interesting stories. A lot of people post photos at the sign that says, you may encounter nude people beyond this point. Okay. But anyhow, the reason I'm talking about that the year is sort of ending fiscally, when we reach some sort of end point, we also think about this in December as well. We start to rethink what we've done. We start to take stock. We have postmortems and everything like that. We start to think about, am I on the right path? Am I doing everything that I would love to be doing? Am I still doing it? Should I make a change? And for this industry, the question is, should I leave the business, especially now with the pandemic and the civil unrest and the diversity, equity, and inclusion? Those many conversations that
the format of
it takes a long time to see the real progress for that.
Yeah, the format of our industry, though, things begin, things end. We don't wait
Mm-hmm.
as many people do. If you become a dentist, you wait until you perhaps till you're retired, which could be 40, 50, 60 years, and then you stop. In our business, a show can go into rehearsal in 1 week and go to opening night and close the next day. Um, and then you're out
Yeah.
of work again. It is the nature of what we've got. So I think, more than the end of a fiscal year, we're always asking ourselves, do I want to go through this again? Yeah, the highs are high, but the lows are low. So it's a good question,
Yeah.
but I think when you're talking about the end of a fiscal year, that is the same question that nonprofits need to ask themselves. Like, just because we've existed for 12 years and have been struggling, do we really need to be here for a 13th year? Is anyone clamoring at our doors to see the work that we do, or are we begging them to give us donations? And are we tired of it? That's a question also. So, on this, it's not even depressing. It's a great thing that, as you grow, it
It's
lets
just
you make
it's
decisions
life.
about your life. How exciting!
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I was thinking about individuals because I came across a great article um, in Broadway World for stage manager stories with Cherie B. Tay,
Mm-hmm.
um, who is the stage manager of A Strange Loop, who we just can't stop talking about. And fun fact, Cherie Tay stage managed a show for me way back when.
Very cool.
So I'm very excited about
And you've
that.
got a Pulitzer Prize
So
winning
uh,
friend also, right?
a, a Pulitzer Prize winning playwright. Yes, yes.
Fat
And I
Ham.
also
Fat
also
Ham.
have a best selling author friend as well. I will claim every single one of them if it gets me anywhere.
Right. Well,
It's actually all about
I
them.
still
The
take
celebration
credit
for all of them.
for the television film careers of some very famous people who I directed when I was in my 20s, as if I had anything to do
Mm,
with their success. But I'll take credit.
yeah. Oh
I'm
no,
going to
I
drop
was
names.
riding on the acknowledgments.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'll drop
I was go-
names.
I was
Denzel
gonna I
Washington,
ride.
Bruce Willis, Giancarlo Esposito. They were all in my living room. We were all working together. And look where they are, and look where I am.
I was in that living room.
Yeah, no, you weren't. Not that
I was
particular
in that
living
living
room.
room.
No, you were not.
Not
Different
at that
living room.
time. But
Not at
I've
that.
been in the same living room as
No, no, they
Denzel
were not in that
Washington.
living room. No, no, I was living somewhere else.
Oh, not
I'm
that living room?
sorry, it was not
Okay,
that
well,
living
who
room.
famous was in the living room I was
Besides
in?
you, no, well,
Besides me. I mean, I'm mediocrely acknowledged.
there you go. So, but on that level, let's get
I
back to
might
what would make you, Darnell, leave the business of entertainment and theater? At what point, what would your low
well,
have to be for you to make that decision?
I think I feel like I have gotten to a point where I can justify still holding on to the things I love. And so I think to look at a life of mine that is completely detached from the business, I don't think I would ever see it really, because I've thought about it since I've always been in arts and culture, and I've always been a part of the ITM industry, and
Mhm.
I feel like sometimes when I'm very focused in IT, I'm thinking like, am I really pulling away from theater? Am I checking out of theater? And then I realized that no, you're having conversations about theater every day. You've been having them for the last 13 years. And you see way too many shows. I don't know how they fit on my calendar. It's crazy for June to be so overwhelmingly full with great opportunities to experience live theater. But
Except
I
in New
also feel
York,
like if
it's Tony time in New York, so we're used to May and June.
yeah,
You know, I'm
hmm
just saying we have
but I
different
also feel like
experiences.
if I'm working,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But if I'm not physically working in it, like receiving a paycheck in it, I guess. See, I've always had the mindset that I love theater so much that I would do it for free, and I have done it for free. And running my own company, I definitely did it for free.
And,
Um,
and isn't that part of the
because,
problem? That we love it that much.
well, I don't know. I don't know because what I mean by I did it for free is that I didn't receive financial compensation, but I
Mm-hmm.
grew in every experience, in every theatrical experience I've been a part of. So the thing is, I have to change my mindset on what I'm getting from my involvement in theater. And I know that's not easy to do, but I have been able to do that successfully, which is why I feel like it would be hard to see a life where I was not at all involved in theater. But over the past couple of years, I've definitely observed many people who have, decided to exit stage left,
Yeah.
and pursue something else. But that doesn't necessarily mean they are gone forever. You know, it just means they've gotten out of the car for the time being, which is something that's really hard to do when everything is running on all cylinders. And
Well,
I think this intermission, which it was not expected to be this long. Which how did we know? We didn't know. Um, I think it made people think differently about what they wanted out of life, and whether they could get it at this pace. I would say,
well, survival is the name
and
of the
sometimes you
game,
have to take a
right?
step back.
But survival, the
Yes,
pandemic
and sometimes you have to take a
made
step back.
survival, yeah, taking a step back, and it can be temporary. I think you're very right about that. But there are
Mm-hmm.
people who just said, "I may want to do this, but I'm in competition with so many other people, and nobody is offering me anything, especially during a pandemic. I need to be able to eat and pay my rent, and that means I have to bite the bullet. I had some fun. Now it's time to get a job." The issue would then be what job, right? And if there's no job in the theater, there weren't a lot of jobs in other places either, um, which is very problematic for everybody. But it made people say, why do I want to do this if in good times I'm waiting on tables or I'm working in some job that I have to go to the office that I don't enjoy and I'm working with people who aren't as excited about the things I'm excited about, theater. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you try to look for a place to go. Some of the decision I think is we don't have any place else we want to be. You think that's a truism for a lot of people?
I
Are we
know we've
stuck?
well, I think about it. I feel like uh, people who serve in military can probably relate to this. When you're in a space that is so specific, um, and you step out of that space, and you return to civilian life, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. it is hard. You feel like you've been elevated for so long, and now you're back, on the ground. And I think that's I think it's very similar in theater. Like it's hard to stop having conversations about theater, even if you're not working in theater. Like you might have a job in a corporate office, but you're the one in there who's always talking about a show that's coming to town, or
Well,
musical
and
or
as you
something.
said, if you go to a lot of shows, for some people that may be enough. If you have a couple of friends, you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot of shows. I know a number of retired people from the business. They don't seem upset at all at not having to go to work anymore. They're just excited that they're seeing show after show after show, and they had the experience already. They were there.
Yes.
They have a
Yes.
reference. Sometimes it's a little tiring, but I have some older friends who are constantly talking about shows they saw in the 1950s. I'm over that. It's like, come on, people. There are new shows, there are new ideas. Um, I don't need to see your poster from a 1957 musical. It doesn't excite me by itself. But for them, it does. And I give them full props. I'm never going to say anything negative to them, because it's a
Mm.
great memory. We have some great memories. I'm not sure if you're working at
Yeah.
an Amazon warehouse, your memories are going to be as good. And I can be
Mm-hmm.
wrong. Maybe you made great friends there. Maybe you fell in love. I don't know. But again, it comes down to
So
money.
we also talked about yes,
it doesn't it? You
yes,
have to
but
pay your bills.
okay. So since we're talking about money, um, we also talked before we hit record
Mm-hmm.
about what if you came into enough money to not have to work
Right.
in the business anymore?
Yeah.
What would you
My
do?
number is $100 million.
And
I will happily quit
yeah,
if someone gives me $100 million. As I said to
and
you,
so you'll
also,
be in it for the rest of your life, and you want nothing else till you die.
thank you for serenading.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like if I came into a good amount of money, I've already said it before. I would become a you know I would be a I'd use that money to spin up more performance venues,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that there's a need for it. Live entertainment. Live theater specifically, but live entertainment in general. I think that I would, if I came into enough money to not have to work in the capacity that I'm working in right now, I think I would just find another capacity to support
Well,
the
is
industry.
that the
And
qualification for me getting $100 million? I would also spend the money on theater if I had it. But if you're telling me I need to leave the
yeah.
business, then $100 million is the number. Below that, I'm going to probably go, I
Oh,
don't know, I have
true,
to
true.
think about it. I have to think about it. And money, by the
Yeah.
way, is
Well,
most of our problem, in that to put on theater the way that excites us because it's so collaborative, at a certain point, you stop
mm-hmm.
asking all your friends to work for free. And it doesn't mean you have to
Yes.
give them a ton of money, but everything costs money. You cannot invite
Yeah.
100 people into your living room, so you need to rent a studio space. You can't put on a musical with 20 people in it unless you have rehearsal time, unless you have printed out either scripts or music. Everything just keeps adding up. And even if you don't have a lot,
Well,
it's
maybe not 100.
100 what, million?
Maybe not 100.
Oh, 100.
No,
Okay.
maybe not 100 people, but here in Philadelphia,
Uh-huh.
we have a festival called the
Oh, yeah, but that's
Solo Festival, which is
only
coming
one
up.
person on stage, and you know my feeling about that.
Oh no, oh no! These productions, these productions have been presented in apartments with limited seating, like 5 to 10 people.
Hmm.
So I was going to say maybe a percentage. You can't do 100, but you could do 10% of
and
100.
and you can leave me
in
out of that
Yeah.
audience. It just it's a cabaret.
Backyards. You could do a backyard.
And by the way, I have actually I did an entire summer
Yes.
with my own nonprofit theater company where we used the various people's backyards in their barns, literally in their yards,
Mm-hmm.
and we put on anything from Beckett to Pinter outside in a backyard. I mean, give me a break. But it was
Yeah.
a phenomenal experience. And yes, it still costs money. So the question still is,
Hmm.
unless you have disposable income, even if it's not a lot, um, you have to be hired by somebody else who does have disposable income or has a bank account.
Yeah.
And that's, I think for a lot
Mm-hmm.
of us, it's the experience of working with other talented people toward the same goal that is the thing that gives us a high. You want to get to that performance and go, look what we created together. Wow. I mean, it really is a high. I
Yeah.
watch documentaries on PBS about some of these musicals and shows and dramas, and it my entire insides light up because I remember that
Hmm.
feeling of being able to say, my God, the audience, 1,500 people in a Broadway house stood up, and I was one little cog in putting this all together, and we all feel good about it. We couldn't have done it without each other.
Hmm.
And God forbid, on Broadway, everyone got paid. Oh my God, what a combination.
Yeah.
So, again, what if they stopped paying
Yeah.
me? What if they said the only chance you had to ever work on Broadway or off Broadway or regional or in the backyard was if you made no money and you had to give up your time from a job that did pay you money. It's not would you do it, it's could you do
Hmm.
it. That's where we're talking. You and I were also talking about the new normal. How do we restructure the finances of what theater means to us so that we're not asking people to give, especially people who start out poor, we're inviting them into the family. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Internships are still free in most places, or they pay you dirt. How do you ask somebody who needs to go work in a grocery store to help his family to come in and join us in the theater if you can't give him some money? What are we going to do? I know I'm taking this conversation
Well,
a whole different direction, but I worry
oh
about
no,
that.
no. I mean, but these are conversations that, you know, I think the conversation's different now because technology has allowed for a lot of things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
For example, it wasn't as easy to invest before, maybe like 20 years ago. It wasn't as easy to invest. Probably even 10 years ago, it wasn't as easy to, get involved in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just thinking about, I feel like if I had an earlier conversation about the importance of saving and saving early in the many ways I could do that, because the goal was to have, you know, the money sort of sustain itself,
Hmm.
then I wonder if things would have been different. You know,
I agree with you. I ask
this is a
myself that
conversation.
question all the time. The options that I had when I
Yeah.
was younger that no one even presented the question to me. I didn't know that was a
Mm-hmm.
possibility, nor that my path might have been better if I had made a few little adjustments to how I began my career.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
still
know.
don't know
Isn't it
the
crazy
answer.
when you think about how it's crazy when you think about how long, um, how long you've worked in any kind of capacity over many years. Think about the last 10 years, for example, and the amount of money you've made over the last 10 years. If you could have had that all at once, it would have made a huge difference, but it may have trickled in such a way where it didn't really feel like it was any money at all.
Well, on
And
the other hand,
I
I
always think about that.
I'm sorry, I would have blown it, and I'm glad I didn't have it
Hmm.
at the beginning because, well, I'll tell you a very quick story. When I did have my own nonprofit in my 20s, we produced a show that was a hit, a critical hit. All the New York tri-state area papers were raving about it. It was a showcase, though. It was a 4-week limited run. We had people come to us offering money to move it into a regular off-Broadway run. And the problem was I was in my 20s and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how much it would take.
Hmm.
I didn't know what the process was. I was just learning the business and I didn't even know who to ask. We tripped over a quality show. How do we teach? And they don't teach this stuff in school. You don't learn it in college. You don't learn it in arts administration classes, which, by the way, didn't exist 20 years ago. Right now, the reason we are having so many managers, it seems, is because getting finances for theaters are so hard, it's so difficult, it's so intricate. They need more and more people to market, more and more people to worry about the IRS and the finances and write grants. And it used to be, in my head, you put on a show, right? You got yourself a theater space and you had a play and you got some actors and you put on a show, like in the old movies with Mickey
Yeah.
Rooney and Judy Garland. That's falsehood. That just doesn't exist. Anyway,
Yeah.
you're hitting on something. There's so much I want people in their 20s to learn early. Save all the mistakes I made, and I do believe I would have not made those mistakes if somebody had helped me. Um, so and you're
I
talking about
wish that
finances.
I
Go
knew what I
sing.
know now
I
when
love
I was
I
younger.
love your musical interludes. Thank you. I wouldn't do that to the audience by singing myself. Um, you know, it's both exciting and horrifying to think that we're still in this business right now. you know, um,
Yes.
but the experiences are amazing, even the bad ones. Well, not all the bad
Hmm.
ones. Some of them I could have lived
Well,
without.
you know, there have been times where I've, you know, likened it to a bad, or not a bad, but sort of a problematic relationship where, there's love there, but everything isn't perfect. And, some days you can't wait for it to end. And then when it ends, you can't wait for, you don't want it to end, and we'll get in this wheel. This wheel winds down for us when a show ends. And then, maybe a couple of days before, we can't wait for this to be over, but we also want to get
Right. Or
back on another wheel,
or you find a
Uh,
nonprofit and you work there year round. But again, it's what
mhm.
if you're working for someone who's a bully? What if you're working for someone who doesn't care about his or her staff, right? And you're thinking that's just the way it has to
Yeah.
be for me to be part of theater because you don't have the comparison. That's the kind of information I think that I'm holding on to. That there are wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful experiences, and the bad ones get the hell out because there will be others. Except that we all need
Hmm.
a job, and that's what we're all afraid of: being out of work, right?
Which it's always very tough for me to fathom. It's like, the theater goer, the theater lover, you know, pulls the joy from all of this and takes it with them. The ride home, the conversations the next day, it fuels them. Soundtracks of wonderful musicals just play on repeat for them, and they can't pull away from that energy, that excitement, and it just sort of blows my mind that someone behind the scenes who was responsible for that is a curmudgeon, is someone who is so frustrated with life that every day when they come in, they wish this would all just go up in flames.
And the horror when you when you hear about choreographers, especially, who treat these amazing dancers as if they are cattle, ducks, just yell at them, just scream at them, tell them they're not good enough. And they think that's the way to bring out the best for some reason, or else they're frustrated themselves. And yet there are others who don't act that way. So, but if you want to work for a Jerome Robbins and do West Side Story, that's what you have to live through, I'm told. So what do? You say,
do you think that comes from
what?
Do you think that comes from that mindset of like I've got to be aggressive to get what I need out of you? Do you think that comes from what am I trying to say? Like it comes from a limited timeline. Like if you don't have time, right? If everybody was supposed to be off book 2 days ago, and you're still calling for lines, I can see how that could be frustrating. But I'm wondering if it's like that because of the timelines being
I once asked,
so specific.
I remember asking, watching producer Joe Papp and by the way, I think the world of him, and I learned so much from him. So, and by the way, he has a special about his life coming on PBS this Friday night, which I cannot wait to. There are 3 books, biographies on him, and all 3 of them have mistakes in them, I am told from people I know who know him well. So there's nothing perfect, but he was a very special man. But I watched him treat people as if he literally ran them down. No one is getting in the way of me getting what I need for my theater. I am going to mow you down. And I remember turning to his assistant and going, do you think to be a really successful genius producer, you have to be really cruel and mean and yell a lot? Or is that just a technique? And never got an answer, by the way. None of us know. I don't know. Is genius come along with yelling at people and being so demanding that they cry as they leave rehearsal? Is that what genius is? Or can you be kind and be a genius at the same time? I don't have the answer. I don't know, because I'm not a genius. There you go.
Yeah.
How about you, Darnell? You a genius? No answer?
Well, I was a mobile genius.
There you go.
At a fruit-themed technology company. But no, I'm just somebody. I don't know. I'm just somebody who has bits and pieces of information that I think when I pull it all together, gives you good food for thought.
Well, I want to change.
That's how I look.
I'm going to change the word from genius to Renaissance man or woman. That I think
Renaissance man.
I think what that means to me is somebody who can do more than one thing well. you don't have to be the best at all of it, because many people know know a little bit about a lot of things. That's not the same thing as a Renaissance man. There still have to be some fortes, things that you are really good at that you got, but you get the rest of life. You get that most of it is not brain surgery, right? And unless it's brain surgery, we don't need to always yell. We don't need to be horrible to our fellow human being. But then again, you give me 3 weeks of rehearsal when I need 5, and you're lazy. I don't know. Would I yell? I think I would yell. It's a hard balance. It's I don't know.
And that's what I would.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Like it's not. I think, is there enough time to realize it's not about this? It's not about this interaction. It's about the situation altogether. Like if someone, let's use the lines. It's supposed to be off book, but it's calling for lines. It's the situation we're in. We can't move in the direction that we wanted to, that we had planned, because we're not moving as quickly as we would have hoped. I think something that is missing, especially when you look back, I'm just saying, for example, because I was talking about this the other day, the Fosse Verdon, the
TV movie?
the limited series.
The TV, yeah.
When you think about that, the TV movie. When you think about that, you're like, where did you get your training from? How did you get in here thinking this is the way to do it? And why do we keep holding on to those things? Like there was something I mentioned to you earlier where I said, this is just the way we've always done it. Do you think our community has a hard time holding on to what they think we've always done instead of doing what needs to be done? Like we don't evolve quick enough as an industry. We're not keeping up with the work we're bringing to stages because we're still operating behind the scenes the way we've always done it.
Well, that's an understatement. The reason your question is good is most of the world is much worse in adapting to change or noticing a better way to do something than the theater world is. We're actually better. The problem is the more money, as with everything in a capitalist society, the more money that gets involved, a la Broadway has more money than does some little stock company in Massachusetts or something. The more money involved, the less change anyone is going to consider. You just in the example before, let's say you do need 8 weeks of rehearsal for the kind of show you want to put together. Well, financially, they're saying, hey, we can only pay everybody for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And the creative people have to adapt. Where the change is, again, we bring back the notion of Joseph Papp, producer, who, when Michael Bennett came to him and said, I have an idea for a musical, I just want to sit around for a while with a bunch of dancers and talk to them about their experiences. It may not work out. I want to do something with them for up to a year. And Joe Papp said, well, I'm not going to pay them as if they're performing for a year, but let's come up with an idea. And he went to the unions, and they came up with the first workshop that ever existed in all of theater. And they came up with a financial plan, which was dirt cheap, but everybody wanted to do it, and everyone was getting some money. And that's where a chorus line was created. But it was a year. And no one in their right mind says, I'm going to pay people to come and talk about their experiences, and maybe we'll end up with a show at the end of a year. But Joe Papp was willing to. That's how he used his money. He said, who's got the idea? It doesn't have to fit the old norm. And here we are back with 4-week rehearsals for plays and 5 weeks, and we still have 10 out of 12s. That's that rotten last few days of rehearsal where everyone's allowed to work 12 hours or 10 out of the 12 hours in a day, then get no sleep, come back in and have to do more work the next day, and then come back in and have to do a preview, and then after the preview, rehearse the next day, and then have to do another preview, and then have changes in the script and do another preview. And everyone's exhausted. People get sick. People hurt themselves. And no one's willing to say, why don't we just add a week of rehearsal at the beginning and not have those kind of things? Yes, I've read of a few nonprofits in the hinterlands of America who are trying that. That came out of the pandemic. Good for them.
Why?
But nobody who's spending real
And why
bucks.
isn't that expense?
Why isn't what expense?
Why isn't that expense already in the budget?
Thank you. Because it's
to have the extra
somebody
time.
Has got to say, I'm doing more than just producing a show in a system that already exists, which is Broadway or off-Broadway or regional. It already exists. A nonprofit theater, we have slots. We do X number of weeks of performances. We have X number of amount of time to do rehearsals, and we've already scheduled the whole year ahead, right? So they're not thinking, oh, someone may come up to us and say, I really only need a week's rehearsal for this one. Well, they're going to go, okay, but we're not filling in the other 2 weeks. And so why would you do that, right? You stick with the 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever you were given. What if you get a monster hit? Well, we can only have room to extend it for 1 week because we have another show coming in. Change it. Do something else. Think about maybe you need a second space. Maybe you rent another space. Somebody has got to say it doesn't have to only be one way. And those are the leaders of our theaters, and they're not doing it.
And sometimes...
Go ahead.
And sometimes that's fabricated, too. There are many of my PR contacts who have, sidebarred me and said, this will be extended. We haven't announced yet. Right. Like they've already planned for it, which is good, but it's like, let's just use it as a gimmick because we have to create this scarcity, this urgency.
Well, in New York, that's
instead
built
of just
in.
saying we've got great work.
New York is built in. Nonprofits get special union rates for the period of time that their shows are seen by their subscribers. The second it goes beyond the subscriber period of time, they must pay a higher rate of pay to the actors and everybody else. Therefore, they build in 1 week of that thinking, if we have a hit, we can make some money at higher prices. They build in a higher price of ticket sales, and we're going to charge more. It's instead of saying, is the show worth it? What are we going to do if we really think it's a hit? What are we going to do if it's a bomb? Should we close it early? It doesn't work that way. You have to just go with the flow, I guess. It's a system. Yeah. We talk, I hate to make it larger. We have systems that don't work in this country. Have we noticed?
Our country?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, and England, I mean.
Is there a way?
Go ahead.
Can you think of a way to
yeah.
Can you think of a way to mitigate that risk? To make that risk, I guess, more palatable, I guess.
Yes.
It does seem like we're always operating on shoestring budgets, and
I do think this is not the format. I mean, I'm not trying to cop out on the, and that's a bad phrase. I apologize for cop out, But I'm not trying to avoid my personal opinions. Just by myself, as opposed to my opinions being part of a think tank, which is something I desperately wanted during the pandemic. If we cannot be doing theater right now we sit down over Zoom and we share every idea and we figure out how do we make this financially easier, make sure more people are covered, healthcare, salaries, and more writers get a chance to try their luck at creating art in America. We have done almost none of that during the pandemic. A great disappointment. Now, I'm hoping there are some theater companies that are willing to sit down and say, wait a minute, we learned a lot. Let's see if we can put it into effect. And maybe over the next year or two, we'll see some of it. But I mean, if I got my hands on a theater company that at least had a bank account to get started, I think I could do better than what they've done. The problem is so many of them are so poor to start with that, it's very hard to talk about how do we set the table if you don't have enough money to buy food from the grocery store. I mean, it is difficult. I get that. But there are many rich companies.
Yeah.
Many rich companies. And they are not doing what Joe Papp did. They are still just trying to have commercial hits on Broadway or somewhere. And that's a shame, in my opinion. I mean, it's great to see the shows. I'm not against that. But there's more they can be doing. A lot more. There are so many writers, so many directors, so many actors. Again, sharing with our wonderful audience, there are 51,000 equity actors, union actors in New York City. More than 97% of them are not working in the arts. 97%. That's an embarrassment. Now, that doesn't count the non-union actors, and I'm not trying to talk anyone out of joining our business because you never know which year your time hits, right? And as you said, working in the backyard can be very exciting. You do what you can do. But we can do better. I really believe that. And I don't know who wants to listen, which is why I hesitate to mention ideas.
Yeah, it is interesting. Would you join any other union if there wasn't a real opportunity for gainful employment?
No, is the answer.
I mean, like,
yeah. On the other hand, though, with Broadway, for example, you can't get a job unless you're in the union. So that's, you can get the job and then join the union. It's not, you don't have to do it first, but you are going to have to belong. And I know in ATPAM, my union, managers and press agents, it's a wonderful group of people who work day and night. They kill themselves for these things, and they're all trained. They are trained financially. They are trained in ways that people in smaller theater companies wouldn't even understand, and that they certainly don't teach you in school. But because we're dealing with, on Broadway, we're dealing with, it can be $3 million a week, and we're responsible for it. So that kind of training, what if you're not guaranteed a job, which you're not? And what if you're out of a job after the show closes, which happens all the time? So what are you doing? I don't know. It's a big question for someone deciding whether this is their profession or not. Right?
Yeah. But then at the same time, there are so many jobs. There are so many jobs, when you're thinking about Broadway, there are so many jobs behind the scenes.
Right. But each of them
There's
have a
still very
union.
much theater jobs.
But there are, and I know Broadway. I don't want to
Yes.
only talk about Broadway. There are only 41 theaters on Broadway. How many jobs can they be? Again, thinking 51,000 in equity. Certainly, ATPAM only has for managers and press agents together. We're at like the 700 people. That's it. It's a small unit, and there are lots of. The wardrobe is small. The stagehands is large, but they can do television. They can do film. They can do theater. Although the local stagehand union is theater only. So that also is how many jobs can you keep? What if your show isn't a long running show? Right? Don't know and you paying mortgage, you have a family, God forbid. You go out to dinner, you want to own a house. All of that's possible on Broadway. It's not necessarily possible in the hinterlands in the smaller theater companies. So it's the only reason why I keep harping on Broadway. At least it's possible to be financially stable. Or you get a year-round job with a theater company in Florida or Indiana, which is great. No, but it's a weekly salary. You know that you can get.
It's possible.
Here we go, singing.
Anything's possible.
No. You're supposed to go to It's Possible from Cinderella. Wrong song.
I know. I was going to go there first, but I thought I'd go to Seussical.
It's a motif. Both Cinderella and Seussical and many other shows, all about being possible.
Yes.
Right? And even Sondheim in...
So how do we...
Okay. Sondheim had a song.
I was going to say, possible. So even though it's a...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Even though it's a rejected title, how do we leave the ghost light on in our own minds?
Ooh, nice image. All right. I guess there are people out there. The ghost light, by the way, it's a tradition that you'll talk to anybody on Broadway and they'll say, don't need it. We put it there because it's important to remember. It's important because there are lights. We all have night lights. There's electricity. It's not the same thing. But that light is so important as an image. I remember walking into, and get in trouble for this, during the pandemic, I walked into the Winter Garden Theater when it was closed. There was somebody at the door who I knew, and they said, sure, you can walk in for a second. And nobody was supposed to be there. And there was a ghost light on stage. And Beetlejuice had been the show that was in there. And I'd seen it, loved it. And I just looked up at that stage, and it was eerie that everything had just frozen. And you know what? If they had some electrical nightlight, it wouldn't have been the same thing. It had a mystical quality to it. So I think the mystical part is what captures us. There's, it's like, on a day-to-day basis, we're going to work. But it's mystical. And I guess that's what keeps me around. Yeah.
We've got magic to do just for you. We've got miracle plays to play.
Don't go past 8 seconds. Yes. We'll have to pay the rights.
I know. I'm counting. Counting bars.
I don't know.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. We can't quit theater. We wish we could. We can't.
So what?
Because once you're bit by this bug, it is a virus.
It is. What do you? And there's no vaccine
that consumes your entire life.
What do you tell somebody who has no money
for the theater?
What do you tell someone who has no money? How do they get involved? Let's be real for them. Right? It's not going to happen with an internship.
How to get involved?
Yeah, you went to. Whether
Well,
you went to college or not doesn't
I would
matter.
say
Yeah.
yes. I would say you think about anything else you want, and you find all kinds of creative ways to make that possible as well. So, like, if you want to work in theater, but it doesn't pay well at this point, you find something else to sustain so that you can continue working in theater. It's just like, if I want to buy I don't know, a video game or something I can't really afford, I got to figure out what I can do to be able to afford that.
Mm-hmm.
Like what else can I do? I think we do need to sit down every now and then and think about what skills we've acquired and how they can be applied elsewhere.
Is that the
You
is
know,
that the
um,
regular? Make sure you have a backup plan. Is that parents always tell their
well,
kids?
it's not. Well, I guess so. It's not necessarily backup plan. It might, uh, like I said on many episodes before, I want it to be well rounded in arts and culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I justified every job I've had in arts and culture. I worked in box offices. I was like, that's front of house operations. I need that if I'm ever going to run a theater.
Right. That's true.
you know, I started thinking about it like that. I was like, okay, I went to school for multimedia and web design and said, okay, theater companies and productions have websites that need to be managed. That's something I could do. I could provide those kind of skills. Um, I just started thinking about everything that supports what I actually want to do, and I'm pretty sure we're such a talented bunch
Yes.
that we can all think about some other things that we can do with these skills. It's just when we have to try to resist the urge to have a pity party and really start thinking we're actually super talented. What else can we apply these skills to? You know, and apply them. I think that this is what we're supposed to do when we get together. We're supposed to be talking about, you know, with your close friends, you talk about the struggles that you're all having,
Mm-hmm.
but you also talk about you help each other find ways through them instead of saying, "Yeah, we're doomed. We're all doomed. I'll drink to that." Like, no. I mean, a lot of times we're looking to find relatability. We're trying to find the struggle that is resonating, so that we know that we're not alone.
That's
No
very
one is
wise. Very
alone,
wise. The one thing
really.
to be careful of, though, and I find a lot of people do this, and I would imagine you have, I know I have, that when you sit with some friends and you're saying, okay, what else can we do in the meantime, or while we're trying to,
Mm-hmm.
get to our dream goal, we start thinking like entrepreneurs. Why don't we put together a theater company? Why don't we do this? And or hey, gee, I
Mm-hmm.
know how to make bolts in my garage. I'm going, work on cars or whatever, and I'm going to start my own mechanics thing out of my garage. Here's the problem: once, if you are an entrepreneur, that takes all your brain power. You must breathe it and live
Mm-hmm.
it. And that's what you want to hold for your dream job. So that means that when you sit around and support each
Mm-hmm.
other and talk to each other, you're really looking for what can I do that I can turn off and get my mind back on my dream job, which is something that most young people are not good at.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you take your skills and you say, well, or non-skills. Say, you know what, I easily can work a cashier's position, and Lord knows it's over at 5 o'clock, and I promise myself at 7 o'clock I'm getting back to either taking a course in directing or directing a show or working on writing my own show, whatever you're going to do, or more importantly, investigating how I'm going to apply for a job that leads to my dream job. Right? So I am on the path, but you have to be able to turn off the moneymaker, and so that you can then find the moneymaker in your dream. That's something speaking for myself, I know I went that direction. All I kept thinking is, well, I'll do it myself if no one will hire me. I didn't know how to do that. Nothing wrong with doing theater, but you got to have a job too. You got to pay the rent eventually. So that is an interest, and it is helpful to have friends and family trying to help you come up with what to do. But it's also sounds very dull, doesn't it? It's a lot more fun to sit around whining all day. It is,
but
I can't get my acting job.
But remember, you're the dynamic, engaging theater artist. So every room you walk into, you'll be that person.
That's true.
You'll be that being in the space, and you'll be able to bring so much light and love to that space because you got it from theater. You bring it into these spaces. And so I thought about that. There were many times I used to say when I was younger that I was too much for the room. And I would often sit with myself and say, am I in the wrong rooms? Or do I have an opportunity to bring something special to this room? Because I don't want to blend into the woodwork. I don't want to be a cog in the machine. I want to stand out, but I don't even have to work hard to do that. Mm-hmm. I'm already too much for the room.
So well said. So well
and maybe
said. I'm 100%.
They saw that.
Yeah. Go ahead, preach. Preach,
yes, maybe they saw that in me.
Preach, I got it.
No. maybe they saw that in me, and that's why they brought me on to their teams.
Well, and the one thing,
but it's hard to see that when you have doubt.
Well, and the one thing that you don't ever want to, it's one of the great things about the community of theater is, for the most part, there are always exceptions. For the most part, we accept each other. We like each other. We want to learn from each other. We want to exalt each other, right? And that leads to a better community, a better world, and we get that. We get that before we even start working here. It's part of the type of person that theater attracts. So you don't want to lose that. And yeah, you're right. By the way, one of the phrases I like to use when they teach arts management, in schools, which still drives me crazy. I, for the most part, think it's worthless. Get the work. Get out there and learn how it's really done. Anyway, I like calling it creative management, not arts management. There is a way to solve problems that only people with creative minds can do. And when we were talking about how do theater people learn to change? How do we think our industry can actually move forward? A lot of the problem is we have some managers and administrators and producers who are not creative minded. They are stuck with, I am here in a wonderful business that I can talk about at dinner, and I want to make a lot of money, and that's as far as it goes. You want people who can actually have the conversation with the creative people and say, got it. Let's figure out how to make your paycheck go a little bit further so you're not starving at home. You're not asking a lot. We can creatively solve that problem. Or we're $5,000 short for putting on a showcase. Let's sit around together and creatively figure out how to find that or how to reduce the budget. We can do it together. instead of one person just from the top saying, this is what you must do. That's, to me, creative management. But that is not being taught in colleges, because I've gone to those classes and sat in on them and actually taught a few of them. So anyway, on that note, on your wonderful note about being the best you can be and not letting that go, I guess we're here.
Be too much for the room.
Too much. I like that. A new song. You got to write to Lin-Manuel and tell him to adjust. I want to be in the too much for the room when it happens. Right?
I want to be too much and too much for the room when it happens. Go. I don't know.
There's our note to end this
workshop
podcast.
We'll workshop it, but we need your financial support.
Please, anybody with some money who wants to back us.
Can't do it alone.
We not only the podcast, we've got shows to, not just to perform, a la Stephen Schwartz, but we've got shows to produce. Come our way. Talk to us.
Yes, we do.
Right? Mm-hmm. Get creatively involved.
I think another thing you can do is talk passionately to anyone you know who has more money than you. Just talk so passionately about the work you do and hope that they are so moved by it that they give you some of their money. Actually, I had a conversation. I wasn't even the reason this person ended up in our rehearsal, but he came to our rehearsal and he was talking to us, and then he asked me more about myself, and I told him about my theater company and what I was trying to do, and then he gave me a check.
Yeah.
And made an anonymous contribution. I was like, wow. I mean, sometimes when people know that they could do something that could actually help, they will be so moved to do so, but they will not make an assumption that you need help. I say this about nonprofits all the time. People don't walk past the museum and assume that they need your financial support. You have to remind them every minute that you can, every chance you can, that their financial support is what helps us keep going. If you like what we're doing, support us, and if you work for a nonprofit, support that nonprofit. It's every little bit helps. That you've said that every little bit helps.
And from the audience standpoint and the donor standpoint, let me add to that, and make sure you let these nonprofits, assuming that this is a place you do want to support, make sure they know what you expect from them. It's not just putting on a show. It's not just opening your doors to have an exhibit of art. There is a community mission that you need to let them know, I want impact, because otherwise I can go and just buy a ticket to something that is a commercial venture. And because I can afford it. So why am I giving it to you? Because your stuff has an impact on the community. I feel the passion with which you want to do exactly what you're doing, as opposed to what the guy down the street is doing. That has to be communicated with it.
Yeah.
And but along with that, which is maybe the topic for our next week, it's also a problem that because nonprofits need money, they cater to people who don't need their help. And the thing is, if the mission is there to help people who can't give you $10,000 or $100,000, then you're going to say, well, we're going to put on shows that Joe Blow likes, because Joe Blow gave us $10,000. We don't know who the rest of the audience is. That's a problem for a nonprofit. And that's part of the new normal that I believe we need to go after. That when you tell me that you are making a difference in my community, I will give you some of my money. If you're just putting on a show,
you got to be
I'll just buy a ticket if I want to see it. That's it. And I believe that passionately.
You got to be like Bernie.
Yeah, well, let's not go political. Oh, why not?
Well, I mean, going up, you got to reach the individuals, with smaller contributions.
Well, and it can't be about the contributions.
You have, the more
it's got to be first about the mission first.
Yes.
No,
support.
I'm talking about the administrative end. I get it. Yeah, you want support, but as you said, you're going to get the support when you are passionate about your mission. It's going to come. I don't need which I do, get a please donate every week in my email box. That means you don't even know how much I can afford to give you, and I've already given it. Meanwhile, nothing in that email request tells me what you've done this week to require me or entice me to say, I want to give more. Because you haven't done any more than you did 6 months ago. I'm sorry. That has to be part of it. It's a conversation. And it can't be, we exist, therefore we're worth you giving me money. That's not a good enough reason. It's not. You have to do more.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, may I?
It's an invitation. It's an invitation to join.
Invitation.
Yes.
Not an invitation. 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 There you go.
Yes. You said, may I?
Yeah.
May you what?
I don't know. Oh, may I suggest that we're done for the week? That we're happy to keep the conversation going, but we'll pick up next week.
We are done for the week. Done.
It's been a delight, Darnell. Thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
The struggle is real.
Yes, it is.
The struggle is real. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. I am Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss. I don't know why that's
and
delayed.
We will see you at the theater. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.